Hi, Akona. Morning, morning, say. Well, thanks, and how are you?
I'm on the right place.
Yes, you're in the right place, but you need to come today. There is a pre-briefing.
Oh, where is that?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much. You are welcome, members of the media, our esteemed, I hope the echo there will be resolved. Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. Our esteemed members of the media, you are welcome. Our esteemed community of our stakeholders, you are welcome to your parliament. Thank you very much for being here for this media briefing of the governance cluster of oversight committees of parliament. We have been having these weekly media briefings since last year. These are intended to bring you on board in terms of updating you about the work that is happening within the committees of parliament, which are the critical drivers of the work of the two houses, the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. We call the oversight committees of parliament the engine rooms, because they power that important work of parliament. That is where oversight, lawmaking, and public involvement takes place. So it's very important that we continuously, in the interest of the 7th Parliament's objective of transparency, openness, and accountability, as well as involvement, we from time to time have you here to interact with the leadership that leads these oversight committees of parliament. It's very important that I give that background, because there might be those that have not been attending and they are attending for the first time. Today, we are joined by the media, both physically as well as virtually on our virtual platform. The presentations today in terms of the work of committees will be from the 4 chairpersons that are behind me. I will start with the Honorable Chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. And then also the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, led by Ms. Honorable Teliswa Mgweba. And then the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, led by Mr. Villiers, Honorable Villiers. And then finally, you will also get presentation from the Honorable Chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, Honorable Liezl van der Merwe. You are welcome. Once they have done their presentations, we will open the floor for the questions from the members, as well as the questions from the, if somebody can assist us, that's there to close the doors, but also to address the noise that is coming from outside. And also just the housekeeping, that please let's have our mobile phones on silent. We know that normally, usually in this digital age, they are used for a wide range of things. So we don't want to disadvantage you, but just put them on silent. I was saying that once the chairpersons have done their presentations, we will then open the floor for questions. We will start with the members of the media. We'll get questions from the members of the media. And thereafter, once they are done, we will then take also a round from our stakeholders so that you can be able to engage. And just to remind you that the engagement with our chairpersons is not only limited to this media briefing, but I'm sure on our way out, because there will also be lunch by the time we are done, you will have some time to shake their hands and have a a brief discussion with them. I know that some of them have got some engagements immediately after this, but just that engagement, a brief engagement before they go. So thank you very much. I'm going to invite the first chairperson to present, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Thank you very much, Kabaza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mloto Mutapo, the fellow panelists, the chairpersons of the various committees participating today, members of the media and the stakeholders who are here. I feel very honored to have this opportunity. As we all know, the Portfolio Committee on COCTA focuses on the issues of governance around the intergovernmental relations issues, focusing also on municipalities, also focuses on issues of traditional leaders, the issues of the Khoi and San leadership, and also on the issues relating to the Commission for Religious and Linguistic Communities. I am very pleased to see that we have the stakeholders present here. We have had a very fruitful conference convened by Minister Hlabisa in the last 2 weeks, where the issues of the Khoi and the San community leadership were deliberated, and I must say it was a very interesting meeting with a lot of learning. And I hope that, of course, from here, government and various departments will be giving attention to many of the issues that relate to the recognition of the leadership of the Khoi and the San community, in particular, the issues of the various rights, constitutional, statutory rights, the issues of, land disposition, the issues of the various other concerns on mineral rights, agricultural rights, and development of languages. All of these were issues that were deliberated upon. For this morning, my focus is largely on the issues of governance around the municipalities, and I would like to welcome questions and comments afterwards in relation to the other issues that I may not have been able to focus on. I therefore express my appreciation for this platform of engagement as another way of communicating proactively with the media, but also with various stakeholders. As you know, several committees just returned from the oversight visit last week. Our Portfolio Committee on COCTA has been to the Free State, where we visited Mangaung Metro, and we also visited Maluti Apofong local municipality. Since the start of the 7th Parliament, the committee has conducted oversight visits to municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng and the Eastern Cape, the latest being the one on the Free State. These visits often paint a concerning picture of the municipal governance and finances. In the municipalities that we visited in the Free State were not an exception. The Mangaung Metro, for example, along with the city of Tshwane, is one of the only 2 metros in a group of 74 municipalities whose audited financial position was found to be so dire that they had to disclose significant doubt about their ability to continue operating fully. The Mangaung Metro has been in this position for over 5 years and has been placed under national interventions in terms of Section 139(7) of the Constitution in April 2020, since 2022. In the AG's last audit report on the municipalities, no municipality in the Free State received a clean audit. Last week in Maluti Apofong, the committee heard that the municipality is bankrupt, operating with a deficit of 1.5 billion rand, which will take an estimated 20 years to recover from. The challenges underlying the municipal finances are pervasive across various municipalities. And if you look at them, in the area of annual financial statements, recently the AG's letter to the Speaker flagged outstanding audits for the 2023-24 financial year. 9 municipalities have outstanding audits, with 6 of the affected municipalities in the Free State, 1 in Northern Cape and 1 in KwaZulu-Natal and 1 in the Northwest. This late submission or failure to submit annual financial statement is a matter of concern. But so is the quality of these statements when they are submitted, and this as well compounds the already dire financial situation in these municipalities. The audit reports are important as they are linked to the functionality of municipalities. Over the years, the number of negative audit outcomes in our municipalities has been a good indicator of compromised service delivery. It often suggests that there might be something wrong in the governance of that municipality. So municipal governance challenges often lead to negative outcomes, primarily due to poor planning, lack of fiscal discipline, and failure to follow legal prescripts. Good municipal governance requires proper planning. Without proper planning, implementation suffers, leading to inefficient spending and poor service delivery. In Maluta Pofung this week, we found that the long-term instability plaguing the municipality was due to political instability that ultimately affected the administration, causing breakdowns in various systems of governance. The committee believes this had been demonstrated in various disclaimers by the Auditor General. They have had 5 disclaimers as an opinion, audit opinion to Maluta Pofung, causing dissatisfaction over service delivery by the communities. Then on the area of revenue collection and municipal debt, the dynamic between the debt owed by the municipalities and the bulk suppliers and revenue collections is complicated. Last week, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts noted that municipalities have an ESCOM debt of 94 billion rand, which is overdue. But Maluta Pofung, for example, has a debt owed to ESCOM to the tune of 9 billion rand. This is a matter of huge concern for the sustainability of the utility. In many instances, there's been a sizable year-on-year percentage increase in average outstanding debt of ESCOM, the Department of Water and Sanitation, the water boards, and other suppliers of goods and service. This shows that the majority of municipalities are not honoring payment arrangements with the suppliers of bulk services, and that virtually no progress has been made to reduce the debt owed to the suppliers of the bulk services. One elements to this poor revenue collection system in many municipalities, we find that the revenue collection systems are very weak, with indigent registers not being updated regularly and poor infrastructure maintenance leading to non-revenue water and electricity losses. Conditional grants are also often not optimized to help with the repairs and maintenance of the infrastructure. Then there is the number of government departments and households owing municipalities hundreds of millions of rands for services already rendered. In Mangaung, for example, the committee heard that almost 40 billion is owed to municipalities with household constituting 73% of that. So communities, the culture of non-payment is one of the major challenges. In turn, municipalities in the Free State owe ESCOM and the water boards billions, with several municipalities defaulting on the debt relief program. An arrangement was done to help them to deal with the debt, but they're defaulting on that, they are not able to do that. And that often is linked to their inability even to raise their own revenue. So the committee also heard that most of the province's municipalities cannot pay the financial obligations, and most of the proposed budgets are unfunded. And that's another huge problem. A number of municipalities, they pass a budget, but it's actually not properly funded, and so they will end up in a deficit at the end. This pattern of increasing debt and weak collection systems is threatening municipalities' financial viability and their ability to deliver basic services. So there are many ways of dissecting these challenges. These, for example, include political and administrative instability, conflict between leaders and administration, and the lack of appropriately skilled personnel, amongst others. For instance, financial managers need financial expertise, whilst infrastructure managers need relevant technical knowledge. So when we visit on an oversight visit, we actually get an inventory of the top managers. What are their skills, their qualification, what are their level of experience, how many years they've been doing that job. Because then we are able to understand the performance. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand until you get to that level to realize that the people who are here are not qualified or they don't have adequate experience. And if you want to turn it around, you have to start by correcting that. And so we focus on that quite strongly. So as a committee, we believe that if you don't solve that, it's got implications on it's got implications for service delivery. So the role of the community, particularly our portfolio committee, excuse me, is to play a role in ensuring government accountability. When the AG identify issues, or we identify issues on oversight, we then ensure that these are investigated. We demand explanations, and we demand that action needs to be taken. We call on ministers and the mayors and MECs to focus on taking corrective actions, and in particular issues of consequence management, internal disciplinary processes, as well as ensuring that there's proper investigations. And we ask for these reports on investigations, and we take it from there to say what needs to be done, what has been done. And our focus becomes a question of, if you have had these negative outcomes over a period, what actions have you taken to correct them? And what action should be taken? And quite often, you realize that that part is very slack, and we insist on that up to the level of the ministers, as well as to the level of the criminal justice system. The committee recently received a briefing from the National Cooperative Department on efforts to support struggling municipalities. During the oversight visit, we also heard from SALGA and provincial treasuries about how they provide support to municipalities. The portfolio committee continues to monitor all of this. The minister was able to indicate to us that they've taken some of the top 10 worst performing municipalities and giving them support, because this has been the issue we've been concerned about. What direct support is being given? Does the department have adequate capacity to support those municipalities excuse me, in such a way that they can turn around? Because you can have interventions. If you have interventions that don't result in an improvement in the governance and the administrative systems of the department or of the municipality, then of course there's a challenge there. So we as the committee will always be focusing on that to ensure there's accountability, to ensure that there's consequence management, to ensure that there's investigation and actions on criminal transgressions, and ultimately the taste for us of good performance is community satisfaction with service delivery. Without that, we will always continue to be agitating for changes, for action on the side of the municipalities and government so that this can improve service delivery. Thank you very much. We'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mkhize. May I now invite the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Honorable Mgweba. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Molapo, good morning to the members of the media, the stakeholders present here, and the people of South Africa. The Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Portfolio Committee oversees the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, the Statistics South Africa, the Brand SA, and performs some of the work related to the Department of Public Enterprise. The committee's mandate with regards to lawmaking, oversight, and public participation is informed by the government's identified priorities. The committee's portfolio-specific mandate is about overseeing the achievement of South Africa's developmental goals as outlined in the National Development Plan. The following are the key highlights of this portfolio committee. The Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation is mandated with the responsibility of ensuring overall planning and alignment for the whole government. During the State of the National Address on the 6th of February, the President confirmed that the adoption of the Medium-Term Development Plan. As the custodian of the country's planning system, the DPME has developed the Medium-Term Development Plan for the current administration. And the MTDP sets out the government program for action for the next 5 years and is aligned with the national priorities of the government of national unity. One, to drive the inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, and building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Important to note, the next 5 years also means reaching the stated timeline for achieving the National Development Plan goals by the year 2030. The DPME is also mandated with the responsibility of facilitating the implementation of the National Development Plan. A vision for 2030, one of the main purposes of the MTDP is to outline the NDP's priorities, interventions and programs to be implemented over a period of 5 years. Considering the time left before we reach the year 2030, this compels the committee to intensify oversight efforts towards accelerated implementation of the MTDP interventions and programs. At the beginning of the 7th administration, the President announced that the Department of Public Enterprises will cease to exist, and its responsibility were transferred to the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. But however, in August, the President further moved the responsibility of the shareholder oversight of state-owned enterprises to the various policy departments, which is through the line ministries. And the DPME has been tasked developing the National State Enterprise Bill, which will oversee all strategic SOEs. This will pave the way for the State Asset Management SOC, which is called SAMSOC. Parliament has received submission on the bill and will interact with all stakeholders to conclude the process of enacting the bill. On Statistics South Africa is a national government department accountable to the minister in the Presidency and Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. The Statistics South Africa is mandated to advance the production, dissemination, the use and coordination of official and other statistics to assist organs of the state, the businesses, other organizations, and the public planning, monitoring, and decision-making. Since the beginning of the 7th administration, Stats SA has produced various statistical data, including the census results, the income and expenditure survey, and is in the process of producing now the poverty index. The committee welcomes the data and information produced by the Stats SA, which is the key for the core functions of government. In addition of being responsible for producing official statistics, the Stats SA has coordinated the reporting process on the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs are a set of global goals that the country, including South Africa, committed to achieving by the 2030. It is an international statistics reporting obligation for Stats SA to produce SDG for countries' reports for South Africa, presenting an overall picture of progress achieving the SDGs. The committee has noted the challenges related to the key personnel in critical roles, such as statisticians and data scientists leaving the organization for better opportunities elsewhere. But also the committee will continue to provide guidance and support to the state SA while advocating for improvement in the organizational environment, including the allocation of adequate resources. The brand SA was established as a trust in 2022 and gazetted as a Schedule 3A public entity in accordance with the PFMA number 1 of 1999. Its purpose is to develop and implement a proactive and coordinated international marketing and communication strategy for South Africa to contribute to the job creation and poverty reduction and to attract the inward investment, trade and tourism. And the aim of this brand SA is to make an indirect contribution to the economic growth, job creation, poverty alleviation, and social cohesion by encouraging local and foreign investment, tourism, trade through the promotion of the national brand. And the committee priorities are very simple, honorable members. The committee will continue to provide oversight on the government's priorities in line with medium-term development plan. This will be done through conducting oversight the whole planning framework of government, as well as oversight over implementation of identified targets and intervention. The committee is also at the forefront of ensuring that budget allocation is in line with the priorities as contextualized in the MTDP. It is a priority of this committee to get a briefing from DPME about the MTDP to see how the stated 3 priorities of this administration are set to be achieved. The committee will then ensure that these priorities are translated and find expression in department strategic and annual plans for implementation in a coherent, coordinated, and effective manner. So the committee's work will also involve providing oversight over the implementation of the MTDP. Considering that the year 2030 is 5 years away, we need to know the progress in relation to the implementation of the NDP. This committee is planning to request a briefing from the DPME about the 30-year review report. This report is titled Towards a 30-Year Review of South Africa's Democracy, which is from 1994 until 2024. This will give the committee insight on progress attained towards achieving the developmental goals. And also the committee will ensure that to get the briefing from the Stats SA on the latest South Africa SDG report 2023 to ascertain whether there is consensus between the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation review reports and the country's reports in achieving the set goals. The National State Enterprise Bill is currently being developed, and the committee will ensure that public participation is encouraged to enhance legislation and legislation-making process. And in conclusion, the committee plays a critical role in ensuring alignment of government planning and evaluation efforts with the national priorities. Its focus on oversight, legislative support, and stakeholder engagement is essential to promoting a coherent and a coordinated approach to service delivery, performance, and national development. Moving forward, the committee will always be vigilant in ensuring that these priorities are outlined in the MTDP are effectively implemented and that the national resources and support are provided to all departments and onto all entities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mgweba. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Honorable Villiers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairpersons, members of the media, stakeholders, members of the public, parliamentary staff. Good morning. Goeiemorgen, Molweni. As a chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, I'm grateful for this opportunity to interact with you, members of the media, as part of the program to report back and update South Africans on the work we do in the 7th administration of Parliament. As you are all aware, the seventh administration was formed through the Government of National Unity, or the GNU, to chart a new path forward for the country. The GNU resolved to focus on three main strategic priorities to drive inclusive growth, job creation, reduce poverty, and tackle the high cost of living, and to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Our primary focus as the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration is to ensure oversight over the implementation of building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, to ensure that the government plays a critical role to drive the developmental state. In the seventh administration, the committee will focus on four key issues: the implementation of the national framework towards professionalization of the public sector, the Public Service Commission Bill, piece of legislation which we are processing in committee, the building of an ethical, professional, and merit-based public service, the identifying of wastage in the public sector wage bill, such as the backlog on disciplinary cases in the public service, and those are the four issues. So to build a developmental state that will develop the country's economy, create jobs, very importantly, and improve people's living conditions, it is necessary to rally towards a rapid implementation of the national framework towards professionalization of the public sector. A critical part of this plan involves professionalizing the public sector, eliminating cadre deployment, and shielding state institutions from political interference to restore competence and public trust. The framework prioritizes merit-based recruitment and improved performance management systems. In line with this, competency assessments and integrity tests are now applied across the public sector. Key pieces of legislation have also been amended to support this, including the Public Service Act, to provide for devolving powers of human resource from the executive to accounting officers. The Public Service Commission has developed a database of a pool of technical experts that executive authorities must use during recruitment and selection processes of the DGs, the Director Generals, and the Deputy Director Generals in the public sector. Our priority in the 7th Parliament is to continuously oversee whether the national framework is being implemented across the public sector to build the capable, ethical, and developmental state that must drive the economy. The committee is currently also processing the Public Service Commission Bill, and this bill, very importantly, will enable the PSC, the Public Service Commission, to operate independently and impartially as a constitutional body with its own secretariat, and importantly, it will extend the PSC's mandate to municipalities and public entities. We are almost at the tail end of finalizing this bill in committee, and this week the committee will consider and adopt the A list and the B bill of the PSC bill and the committee report on the PSC bill. We expect to refer the bill to the National Assembly House for consideration in about a month. Government has also introduced many interventions to inculcate a culture of ethical conduct among its workforce, and among them are the Financial Disclosures Framework, lifestyle audits, the anti-corruption hotline, the prohibition of public servants from doing business with government. These interventions fall within the scope of the committee's oversight. It is important to continually assess if these interventions are effective in uprooting any element of unethical conduct among public servants. In April 2021, for example, the DPSA developed a framework and strategy for implementing lifestyle audits in the public service. Lifestyle audits are compulsory for all government departments, but not all have implemented them. So the question remains, how many public servants were found guilty because of lifestyle audits since introduced? That is part of the work that my committee must do as part of our oversight. The committee needs to ensure that all these noble system interventions are interlinked to assist the government in uprooting unethical practices such as corruption in the public service. The effective management of disciplinary procedures is another priority of the committee. Inefficient disciplinary management led to government spending millions of rand on suspended employees sitting at home while earning a salary while waiting for their disciplinary cases to be finalized. The backlog in misconduct cases has increased, and as has the number of precautionary suspensions. The department has reported that the total cost of precautionary suspensions has stabilized at around 82 million rand for provinces and 25 million rand for national departments. We understand that there are challenges in the disciplinary management process, such as poor data capturing and record keeping. Unnecessary delays in starting hearings also complicate disciplinary management and difficulty securing presiding officers and employer representatives. The committee must be tough regarding this disciplinary management and work collaboratively with the department and relevant stakeholders to improve the system, especially the record keeping. Digitization of government systems should be the main priority in the disciplinary management system. As part of the committee's oversight mandate, we will embark on oversight visits to Northwest and Gauteng towards the end of March this year. The primary purpose of the oversight is to assess the state of the public administration with the focus on overseeing the human resource management practices or services of all government departments in many areas related to the committee's mandate. As the chairperson of the Committee on Public Service and Administration, I take it very seriously that we have the responsibility to ensure that a merit-based and professional public service is created, because the government cannot deliver the services our people need if they are not professionals that work in the state service and help us deliver those services. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable de Villiers. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please invite the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, Honorable Liezl van der Merwe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Motapo and your team, members of the media present, my fellow chairpersons of portfolio committees, members of civil society and our stakeholders present. Good morning, you're most welcome. Also, I wish to greet all South Africans that are following us online. Good morning as well to our parliamentary staff that are present. I think, firstly, I want to thank you, Mr. Motapo, for the opportunity to engage with the media this morning. But I thought it may be important at the outset just to tell you a little bit about the work and scope of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. The committee oversees the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the National Youth Development Agency, as well as the Commission for Gender Equality. But I think the first thing to note is that the department that we oversee is not a service delivery department. It's got a responsibility to monitor and oversight government departments, as well as South Africa at large, to ensure that there's gender mainstreaming and empowerment programs for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And to execute this vast scope of work, the department's got a very limited budget. While it receives over R1 billion, the bulk of that money is then transferred to the NYDA and the CGE, leaving this department with an operational budget of only 206 million, the bulk of which it spends on staff salaries and other operational costs. And I think it is against this background that there's often this mismatch between what this department sets out to do, what society would like it to do, and what it ultimately achieves. But that having been said, let me just take you through some of the priority areas for this portfolio committee. The Sanitary Dignity Program is a core focus area for the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. The portfolio committee that I lead remain concerned that the program is not reaching all of its intended beneficiaries. In fact, millions are set aside, and these millions are not spent on the Sanitary Dignity project, and when it is spent, it is erratic. Some provinces, for example, pay millions on logistics only. While there are disparities in pricing on these products, which leads us to believe as a portfolio committee that much more must be done to ensure a standardized, more effective approach. Hence, the committee intends engaging with national and provincial treasuries in this regard. With regards to our fight against gender-based violence, the Portfolio Committee will soon embark on a process to identify members of civil society to serve on our very first National Council Against Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Questions remain as to how effective our National Strategic Plan Against Gender-Based Violence is, and whether all the pillars are being effectively implemented by various government departments. Again, this work will require heightened oversight from my portfolio committee. With regard to the NYDA, youth unemployment in South Africa, as we know, remain a national crisis. It remains one of the biggest threats to our democracy, our future progress, and our nation's collective growth. To that end, the National Youth Development Agency is one of our most important public entities. The term of the current board has lapsed, and President Ramaphosa has appointed an interim board. My portfolio committee has just completed the interview process to identify new candidates to serve on a new board. And on behalf of the portfolio committee, I would like to thank all young people that came forward and availed themselves for the interviews. We will, within this week, finalize deliberations on this process. And on behalf of the portfolio committee, I want to underscore again that we remain absolutely committed to finding the very best, most passionate, most patriotic, best skilled, dynamic young people to serve on the NYDA. We want to see an NYDA that is robust, that not only speaks to the vast challenges facing our young people, but an NYDA that implements lasting solutions to alleviate youth unemployment. With regard to the Commission for Gender Equality, our very first meeting in this term was held with the Commission for Gender Equality. The Portfolio Committee remains concerned that the Commission lacks the necessary teeth to deal with gender equality matters in South Africa. Of concern at the moment, for example, is that it doesn't have powers to litigate. Currently, we're informed that this matter will be dealt with through the Legal Practice Council, who has tabled an amendment act. But we have noted with concern that the CGE's research findings and recommendations do not carry the same weight as the South African Human Rights Commission. Their recommendations are often ignored or just set aside and not enforced, and we believe that this should change. With regard to learner pregnancies, the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities invited the Commission for Gender Equality to brief us on a research report on learner pregnancies, as we believe that learner pregnancy, some of which amount to statutory rape, is a national crisis. The Portfolio Committee has subsequently engaged the Department of Education, their provincial MECs, and we will soon also meet with the Department of Social Development. The fact that some learners are allegedly forced to drop out of school because of pressure from schools is an infringement on the rights of these learners, and it will not be tolerated. The learner pregnancy crisis, however, points to serious failures and gaps where it comes to the system meant to protect our young women. With regard to the exclusion of learners with disabilities from the education system, our committee became aware of a shadow report specifically focused on Article 24 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which relates to education. The shadow report, along with a research report and a report by the Auditor General, pointed that between 450,000 and 600,000 learners with disabilities are not receiving education in South Africa. To this end, the Portfolio Committee engaged the Department of Basic Education and 5 provincial departments with regard to the challenges faced by learners with disabilities, either trying to access education or receiving quality education, or even just being able to access tertiary education after school. In addition, other challenges remain. For example, money is allocated to schools, to special schools, or to inclusive full service schools, and that money is not spent. And there are vacancies, in particular professional staff, which are needed to support learners with disabilities. With regard to bills, we remain concerned as a portfolio committee that bills, which the Department of Women and Youth and Persons with Disabilities had championed in the 5th Parliament already, remains outstanding. The committee has resolved that these should be revived and expedited. In particular, what is of urgency is the disability bill. We know that people with disabilities remain marginalized, excluded from the economy and opportunities, and this cannot remain the status quo. With regards to planned oversight, my portfolio committee will in March embark on an oversight program to KwaZulu-Natal, where we will look at the aforementioned issues, which is the implementation of the Sanitary Dignity Program, teen pregnancy, the exclusion of children with disabilities from the education system, and gender-based violence. And we intend interacting with civil society, with community at large, and of course with the executive authority. In conclusion, I just want to say that gender transformation and mainstreaming, as well as youth and disability issues, require ongoing focus, attention, and oversight. As members of Parliament serving on this portfolio committee, which I lead, we remain concerned that many government departments are not meeting their 2% minimum target of the employment of persons with disabilities. We remain concerned with regards to the effectiveness of, or lack thereof, of the programs of the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the CGE and the NYDA. We want to ensure, as the 7th administration, that the reports that we receive in the portfolio committee actually results in real and meaningful change to our communities on the ground. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the 4 chairpersons for very informative presentations. Luanda, just switch off the mic on the podium. We will now open the floor for questions, starting with the members of the media, and thereafter we'll go to the left side, and not by any ideological orientation. I don't want to suggest that because the members of the media are seemingly on the right side as well. So can we start with the members of the media, and then we'll come to the left side of the house. Just mention the name of your media house, your name, and then we'll take the first round, and the chairpersons will be noting all the questions, and we'll give them the opportunity to respond afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moloto. Thank you, House Chairs, or Chairpersons rather. Jason Felix, News 24. I just have a question for Dr. Mkhize. He spoke about municipalities. Chair, you've been a minister yourself of cooperative governance and traditional affairs for a very long time in the previous administration. From what you've seen, what is being done now to fix municipalities, is it adequate enough? If not, what, in your opinion, do you think needs to be done to strengthen government's efforts to improve service delivery at local municipalities? And if I may, Moloto, just a question to Ms. van der Merwe. She spoke about the 2%. Could you maybe just give us a bit of a clarification on what exactly is the 2%, and does that apply to the private sector or just the public sector? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Llewellyn, Prince of Netwerk 24. I have 2 questions. One is directed to Dr. Mkhize, just to add on to what Jason asked. Just with regard to the billions that are owned by municipalities to Eskom and water boards, I just wanted to find out what role will the committee play in ensuring that these debts are being paid by municipalities, seeing that it affects service delivery direct on ground level? And the other question is directed to Mr. de Villiers. You mentioned the issue of the concerns about lifestyle audits. What will the committee do to ensure that all departments are implementing lifestyle audits of all state employees? Thank you.
Thanks, Moloto. My name is Abongo Kobogana from the SABC. It's just a follow-up to the chairperson of the Public Service and Administration, Mr. Villiers, on what Prince was asking. Legislatively wise, what are the new things that you are coming up with in this parliament? Because this issue of a lifestyle audit has been there even in the 6th parliament. And in terms of fast-tracking those legislation requirements, how soon you think that the implementation needs to be actually conducted correctly? Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kolisa Snyanya from Ulwazi Scientific Communications and STEM Research. I have 3 questions for 3 different.
Doctor.
Okay, two
Dr.
questions.
Koliso,
Yeah.
I was going to the second round. It will be for the stakeholders.
Oh.
We're now just dealing with the media.
All right, cool.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We'll come to you. Any other questions from members of the media? Virtually on the group? All right. Honorable Chairpersons, I think let me start with Dr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question from the members of the media, and point raised by Jason about, is it adequate what's being done now? As long as we can point at numbers of municipalities that are dysfunctional, that is the proof that what has been done is not adequate. More needs to be done. However, there has been an improvement. The first report of dysfunctional municipalities pointed at a number of 16 that were functional. That number over the years has improved to 61. Now that means that something is working, but it's not enough. Now, amongst the issues that we have been raising as committee is there's a program too in the department which is called the support for the municipalities, intergovernmental support. Now that support we've actually been asking the minister, the department and the MECs to open up and indicate to us, is it adequate? What needs to be done differently so that it's effective? Effectively, all the support that is needed by municipalities come from that section. So it requires a lot of expertise. So part of what, therefore, there has had to be done has been to, of late, look at the worst performing municipalities. Subsequent to all the questions that we raise, we are satisfied that the approach they've taken might be helpful, although it's not enough. For example, they've taken the top 10 worst performing municipalities, and I was saying that they included Maluti Apofung, to give them an accelerated support. This support means they've got to get national government and provincial government to act together to look at the causes of the dysfunctionality. As I've said, we start from the top and we look at the political instability. This would have happened whether it was intra-party tensions, which means one party in charge has got problems or conflicts, or inter-party in the case of the hung municipalities. Now we have seen how, I think Johannesburg has had to change the mayor 6 times. If you look at Tshwane, they just got the municipality changed last week. If you look at Maluti Apofung, from 23 to 24, they actually changed mayors 3 times. Now that ultimately does have a knock-on effect on the stability of the municipalities. Then you move to the what we call the political administrative interface. Here is how a municipal leadership of public representatives interfere or mismanage the relationship with the administration, giving wrong instructions, taking wrong decisions, delaying in taking decisions, and making it impossible for decisions to be taken on the basis of professional considerations, but maybe having political interference. Now that has to be stopped. And then, of course, if you move further, you look at the question of the management. The management has to be skilled. They've got to be ethical. They've got to be, conscientious employees or servants of the people. So that has to do with the knowledge, the content knowledge of the manager. If you cannot manage something that you have not been trained about, and part of the problem comes from there. When I'm saying you got a CFO, they must have a degree in financial management. If you got a a technical manager of infrastructure, they must have a technical background of some engineering or some such a background. And all of this, we now as a committee will look thoroughly at all of that and will point out to say, no, but how can such a person manage such a portfolio when they don't have the expertise? Where do you expect them to know what they're doing? And that means, therefore, there must be appropriate appointment. And when that happens, we're saying the minister must not concur to the appointment of a manager who is not suitable. And if you move further, you have to then look into the systems of government. How do they operate? And how do they do the expenditure? Do they do proper planning? You look at the audit reports. All of these things are very, very important. But at the end of it all, there has to be consequence management. If there's no accountability, people can go on doing the same thing. I mean, when Maluti Apofung, and I'll keep referring to what's most recent, you've got the same team, but they've been giving us this disclaimer audit outcome for 5 years. Why have there not been action on them? And you have to ask everybody to take responsibility for that. So my point, therefore, is that there's a lot that needs to be done and that can be done. And in that process, the committee calls for accountability, calls for action, asks the right questions, and makes everybody to be accountable from the point of view of the the leadership. But if you look at there's a law, the Constitution gives you the rights for intervention. Then the section 154 of the Constitution says you must give support before you intervene. And then we've got section 139, where the province intervenes. But if the province fails, there's section 100. Section 100 says if the province doesn't do what it needs to do, then the national government must step in and override the province. Now we ask them to do that. And in the process, we also want them to, when they intervene, they must explain how they're intervening. For example, excuse me, in eThekwini, you had an intervention by the MEC that was challenged by the municipality. And when we asked what was the problem, then we realized that if you don't clarify properly, because everything has to be done within the law. Therefore, those are some of the things that we say, if you want to help the 10 municipalities, make it clear that your definition of your intervention is according to the law, because you'll be challenged and the court will throw you out even though the municipality is dysfunctional. Those are some of the things that we have to actually focus on. The second issue that's been raised, I think you said Libalo, if I got the name properly, is ESCOM and water board, the debts that are owed. This is a very complex matter. We have sat with the representatives of the departments, of the municipalities, of SALGA, and of some of the utilities to say this matter needs to be resolved. On the one side, whatever is owed must be paid back. But also, if you look at the debt, if you disaggregate it properly, you realize that there are areas which need to be reconsidered. And that's why you have now got something which is a kind of writing off certain portions of this debt. And in the process of doing so, the idea is to create a balanced approach that allows the ESCOM or the water boards to be able to receive some of the payments, but we also want to make sure that whilst you are paying that debt, you don't cripple the municipalities. So we've been also saying there needs to be caution if they attach the equitable share of a municipality from Treasury. You can't just take all of that money and go and pay off the debts, because you are going to render the municipality ineffective. They'll end up actually existing just to pay the debts and nothing else, and that needs to be balanced. So we have to engage in that kind of conversation with the relevant authorities. But we're also saying the municipalities themselves are owed a lot of money by government. The same government departments owe a lot of money to this, and we've raised it that this matter needs to be resolved. It falls under the ambit of what we call intergovernmental relations. Now, you cannot say the municipality hasn't got money to deliver services, but the same departments are owing the government, the municipality. So it's got to be resolved internally between the government and the municipalities. And in the process of all of that, you've also got to take the responsibility, the community has to take responsibility. Most of the areas where there's a problem with Eskom has been really because of what we call illegal connections. Oma connector is Nyoga. Those end up with a situation where people are unable, the municipalities are unable to get revenue which is due to them. But in the process as well, we are saying there has to be change of the systems. So when there was a whole issue of changing meters for Eskom, it was important that it's got to be balanced with the fact that the system must be more effective. In some instances, you've got people who are not paying because the people who are connecting from their lines are unrelated to them. It's just an informal settlement and somebody just connects and they say this is an Eskom line, but then somebody's house is actually having a huge bill that's unmanageable. Somebody must look into that before you paralyze or punish that community. So these are the discussions that we have to engage in and get the conversation going. Community must take responsibility, government must take responsibility, and of course the utilities also must take responsibility, make it easy, make it possible, make it affordable, but it still has to be done. Payments have to be done for services that are rendered, and then the system will work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mkhize. Honorable Van der Merwe, I see you don't have a mic, so you might have to approach the podium.
No, thank you very much. I was asked a question by News 24 about whether the 2% employment target applies only to government or to the private sector as well. In fact, our employment equity laws, I think it's Act number 55 of 1998, speaks about unfair discrimination in the workplace, but it relates to people with disabilities as well. So the target is that both private and public sector should be employing at least 2% of persons with disabilities in their workforce. But what we find is government, who is the custodian of this law, is not even meeting the 2% target. And you often find that government departments don't even reach the 1% target. On the other hand, government talks now about increasing this from 2% to 4% to 6%, but not even being able to meet the basic 2% target. So our appeal as a committee is simply that government must get its house in order. If we talk about a 2% target of the employment of persons with disabilities, that must be met across the board from all government departments before we start talking about 4% and 6%. But hopefully also the introduction of this disability bill, which we want our department to bring back, will start to address some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Villiers.
Thank you for those two questions from Network 24 and SABC, I believe. A question on lifestyle audits and a question on legislation we're driving, which actually speaks to the two core the mandate and the two core things which we must do as parliamentary oversight committees. We must do oversight and we must legislate. Those are two of our main functions. When it comes to doing oversight, lifestyle audits is a key component of the monitoring we must do to make sure that there are not any more undue business being done with the state. So it's a mechanism to try and find out which public servants is transgressing the law and doing business with the state while they are not allowed to do it. Now, lifestyle audits needs to happen annually, and it is not my committee that obviously executes on these lifestyle audits. It is the Department of Public Service and Administration, but ultimately it is the responsibility of the national government or local government department that needs to get in the necessary skills and have the objective audit done to find where there are issues with lifestyle audits. I think it's important that not having a lifestyle audit done is actually the root of a very big problem, because why are they not being done? And that would really be one of the primary targets of my committee, is to use our powers to investigate why lifestyle audits are not happening, There might be various reasons why they're not happening, but we need to find that out and make sure that we use our committee powers to bring those responsible in front of the committee to explain why lifestyle audits are not happening. But to just maybe hook onto what Honorable Dr. Mkhize has said as well, there needs to be consequences. And consequences in the form of my committee is best enacted when we strengthen the independence and the power, as the Constitution foresaw it, of the Public Service Commission. And that gets to the legislative question, because we are busy processing the Public Service Commission bill, which is an extremely important part of legislation against cadre deployment and a tool to make sure that we have a merit-based and professional state service. And it's an important tool because in terms of the Constitution, the Public Service Commission needs to be independent, needs to be able to investigate personnel, HR, staff issues throughout the whole public administration, so that's everybody that works for the state, to make sure that personnel placements and issues are dealt with correctly. So ultimately, when we receive complaints of public service related issues or public administration related issues, it would be part of our mandate to make sure that the Public Service Commission is used adequately, that they've been empowered adequately through the legislation to investigate these complaints. And then following on that, we need to act on those investigations and make sure that we use our constitutional powers in terms of our committee powers to make sure that the necessary oversight is done and that the right questions are asked and that would lead to consequences for those involved. So I hope I've covered both your questions in that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Villiers. Any other question from the media?
Thanks, Malota. Just one question I forgot to ask again to Chairperson Mkhize. Chair, there's talks of a 2% VAT increase, and there's budgets that need to be compiled before a certain time. You've spoken about the ESCOM debt owed by municipalities to the utility. The cost of living is rising. Do you think that a 2% VAT increase or any sort of VAT increase would compound that problem? Firstly, the municipalities' debt to ESCOM, and then consumers being able to pay municipalities, because that is another layer of a bigger problem that is the reason why municipalities are in the situation that they are. Thank you.
Any other question from the side of the media? I'm going to close this round for the media. The next round will be from the stakeholders. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mkhize.
I'm here in solidarity. No, thank you very much. You know, the issue of VAT increase is a very, very sensitive and compound problem. When we visit municipalities, one of our focus is also the role of the municipality in ending poverty and reducing unemployment, and what activities they're involved in local economic development. It's a very, very important issue if you link it also with the issue of provision of free basic services, as well as the issue of what we call the indigent register. That policy is important to protect the poor. And I think for us, what is important is that not only Parliament, but the executive, municipalities, everybody, we've got a responsibility to protect our communities from poverty and all its effects. And therefore, the focus on trying to build a thriving economy is about ensuring that our people are able to get income and ensure that there's sustainable livelihood. The rise in the cost of living is a huge challenge, and all of us have to do everything in our power to ensure that we can make life bearable to most of our people. Certainly, that increase will have a huge impact on poverty, a negative impact on poverty, mostly on the poor people. Part of what we had committed to do, and I'm talking from a point of view of our party manifesto, is to look at how we can actually increase items that would be either zero rated or VAT exempted as a way of shielding the poor, so that some of the simple food that is nutritious, that is available to the poor communities are affordable, so that you actually use VAT zero rating or VAT exemption to deal with those. So I would actually believe that any increase in VAT would really be very detrimental to the poor, and it's something that has to be considered as a really, really last resort. Now, as we're seeing the commissioner for SARS indicating that it might not be a very wise idea, I believe that that might be a way to actually go. What suggestions do they have of what can be done to improve revenue collection before you even consider VAT increase? Now, VAT increase actually will hit the poor most. And so we would also believe that whatever can be done at different levels, from parliament, from municipalities, from provincial and national government, even from the private sector, we actually have to even look at various other issues such as price fixing and all of those, which have got a knock-on effect, because at the end, the poor have to be protected. We do understand the level of unemployment is high, the level of poverty is very high, the level of inequality is very high. All of these things are a responsibility of this parliament to assist, to protect the communities against huge cost that can be avoided. And so that would be my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kabazela. We always want to start with the members of the media so that we don't detain them too long in case they want to go and file their stories, because we know that they are time sensitive. Can we then go to the side of the stakeholders? I'm going to start with from the most front desk table, and then I will go to the next one. All of them starting from your right to the left. So once you start from the very first one, for the very first hand from the right, and then to the left, and then when we go to the next one, the very first hand from the right, again in that pattern. So until all are taken. So one round. Yeah. Thank you very much in that order.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ndodana Hadebe. I'm from the Civil Society Unmuted Coalition of South Africa. I'm the currently National Chairperson, Deputy National Chairperson. Some of the questions which I wanted to ask, they've been answered through the media, but my one big one is they are all touching about the monitoring. I will just focus on Mrs. Zweli on monitoring and evaluation. Did not hear her speak about the staff, which is the Director Generals, how they get to be accountable, because everyone blames the politicians if something goes wrong. Like now, ESCOM owes this one owes that one. But you all focus on the 5-year term people instead of the full-time people. So as evaluation, do you have a mandate to monitor that situation? Because if I'm a finance minister in a certain department and I don't pay another minister or I don't pay another department, there's a problem, because I'm doing meetings, I'm doing all of that, budgeting, the money is there, but I can't pay. Or what is the issue? As monitoring evaluation, what's your role there? I want to focus on that because it covers everybody. In that, because Dr. Mkhize touched a very good subject for me. I don't know if they can implement it, that they are now evaluating the person if they qualify in the position. Of course, me, I come from rural areas. I grew up in the rural areas. If you give me R1 billion and put it in front of me with those numbers, I'll be confused because I've never done finances. So if he's saying that they are monitoring that, I think I would like to go deeper. Do you fire people? What is the role there? if I'm clear with my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just also to emphasize that questions and comments are welcome, but let's keep them brief so that we can have the opportunity to, everyone will have an opportunity. And what I'm saying has got nothing to do with you. It also has got nothing to do with Dr. Teliswa, who will be speaking after you. It's just a rule that I forgot to mention. So thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Again, my name is Dr. Liezl, and I'm the founder and director of Ulwazi Scientific Communications and STEM Research. So I have a question for Dr. Mkhize. I've written down my questions, and really the problem with stakeholders and stopping with the payments starts with the lack of service delivery and mismanagement. So I'd like to know, how does the government plan to rebuild public trust to ensure that revenue collection is directly linked to improved services and transparent financial management? I also have a question for Ms. Mgweba. How is the government making sure that key experts who hold the required qualifications are retained and do not go out to look for better opportunities, especially in other countries? Like myself, for example, I hold an important degree that is required by the country, but I don't see how I would want to stay in the country if I'm not running my own company. That's just an example. And then I have a question for you, Ms. van der Merwe. Given the critical role of the women, youth, and persons with disabilities portfolio in ensuring effective governance and service delivery, why does it receive such a low budget? What factors contribute to this allocation, and how does the department plan, or the government itself, plan to secure more funding? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet. Next.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson, Mkhize, and all the chairpersons on the board. Good morning, all the traditional leaders. Good morning, all the elders, and good morning, all the media houses. Yeah, I've got two questions. I'm the founder of Home of Independence, HOI, which we represent all the local communities in our area, service delivery issues and bread and butter issues. Yeah, I've got one question. The councillors is failing us on all platforms on our local areas. There's no service delivery when we go and approach them. In the necessary public offices, they ignore us and they don't return their emails, especially when we email them. And secondly is, where can we keep them accountable, or where can we go and report them for failing us as a community? And second question is, I'm as an activist and a traditional educator in our areas, in our local areas. Our Komfondaan and our heritage, we've been practicing that for 2 to 3 years now. We've been spending our own money on funding regarding all these events, and I would just like to know, where can we apply for funding for our traditional Komfondaan events? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next hand. Yes, now we are on the second row.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you
My
for this.
questions will be on two portfolios, Dr. Mkhize, and women, youth, and children with disability. To COCTA, the law of 2019 of the Khoi and San and traditional leadership, we hear that the president is going to revisit that. So the question, what does it mean now, especially to the traditional leadership in the Western Cape? Number two, they've been sent from pillar to post by the Western Cape government. If they approach the Western Cape government, they'll be told to contact COCTA National. And if they approach National, it will be like they're hitting the wall. What does that mean now to the traditional leadership and the House of Traditional Leadership in the Western Cape? How long must they wait? What does it take for them to succeed in terms of their traditional house to be recognized in the Western Cape? To the Department of Women and Children, from my own sector, religiously, there's a huge amount of young girls abuse, especially by the so-called bishops. We have been arresting them. But now the challenge, where do we send these young girls for safety? Because when it comes to courts, they fear for their lives from the perpetrators. Who is responsible for the place of safety for them? Is it your department or social development? Dr. Mkhize, I've got partners that they think they can help your municipalities in terms of ESCOM debt. Is it fine if I give them your number or I give you their numbers? I thank you.
Thank you. The next hand, if you can switch off your mic, Mfundisi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Where is it? Oh, the next hand
It's me,
is
yeah.
at the end. Okay,
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairpersons, for inviting the First Nation people to Parliament. There is the National Traditional Khoi and San Leadership legislation, but we are nowhere invited, not even to the opening of National House of Traditional Leaders. My question to the Honorable Minister Mkhize, the convention that you have mentioned, Mr. Mkhize, was an incorrect version because 3 historical groupings have voted against the convention, which was the Namas, the Griquas, and the Cape Khoi. 2 of the historical groupings voted for the superstructure. And we have warned members of Parliament about this. Here is some historical grouping sitting behind me that was not at that convention. We've warned them tirelessly on top of one another. We said, we cannot continue to resolute at this convention because not everybody is here. There's a political influence within the culture, and that is very concerning. Mr. Mkhize, myself, my name is Queen Belinda from the Shaman Songkwas Royal Drift. I'm a Hottentot woman. My name has been tarnished at that conference by a national minister, Caton Mackenzie, when he took the video that was at that convention and he said that I must die. He wants to unalive me. 350,000 followers wants to unalive me. I am having a major problem with the words that the minister has used when he said that I am an obstacle. Myself, I'm not a politician. I'm a woman for culture. I've been a woman for culture since I stepped in here in this parliament as a young woman. Why must I be unalived by a national minister? And it happened at your convention, and you are doing nothing about it. I am being threatened with my life because it's been said on the 25th of February, the Traditional Affairs has made the ministers' meeting null and void at Kimberley for the 25th of February. And they are blaming me. And as I'm sitting here, I am not just angry, I'm not just furious, but it is war. It is war, because how can I tackle a national minister when he has all the power and money and I've got nothing? I just have my culture. And he wants to unalive me on Facebook, on a national Facebook, and your department is doing nothing about it. What must I do? Do I have to take off all my clothes to embarrass him? What must I do? Because my culture tells me to do that to him. I want your department, Honorable Minister Mkhize, to do what is honorable in this parliament. You must do something. It was your convention. It was your meeting. The video was taken out of context and placed on Facebook. My name is tarnished. What must I do before I go rogue on Parliament and the honorable members for not doing anything? What must I do? I will leave that question by you, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Queen Belinda. The third row, any question? Your hand was up. Okay, I will force you to talk. I'm not going to agree that you have withdrawn your hand. Our very important stakeholders from that. Any other hand on the left row? Okay. Yes, proceed, sir.
Good afternoon to each and everyone. Honorable Minister, honorable members, members of the Portfolio Committee, the media, and all my fellow chiefs. The first question I have is for the Honorable Mkhize. I understand that billions of rands are owned to municipalities, especially for electricity and water. Yet certain communities, well established, if I may say, pay their monthly dues in those municipalities. But when you pass the informal settlements, the Isinyoga is visible. You can see the wires hanging from all the poles. And the police is driving past, government is driving past, no one is doing anything. Yet you mentioned that the municipalities are owned all these monies, and yet this very same government allowed that to happen. What are you people doing? Because this has now been carried on for many years, and the bill is just accumulating. Sadly, that I have to say this is mostly common in Black communities. Is it because the rulers of the land is Black? This is not a racial remark. Is it like this? I look away because it is my people. I think that is totally unacceptable, because I don't believe that anyone sitting here today in Parliament hasn't noticed that. When you see the news, you see the wires hanging down there. People are stealing electricity. The rest of South Africa is suffering because apparently Eskom own all this money. They can't fix certain motors. They can't fix this. And Eskom, on the other hand, also owe a lot of money to the suppliers of the coal. My second question is for Mrs. Van der Merwe. What measures are in place to assist the youth, especially the girls, whom the government has given, this very government has given our girls the right to use and to get birth control without their parents' consent. They are now experiencing, because if I take the pill, if I take the injection, I'm allowed, I'm authorized by the government. My parents don't have a say in that. I can now freely go experience or experiment in sex. Look around and you see how many young children are mothers. They are children and they have done children. I know this is a new platform for you, My question to you, with all due respect, is have you got any measures or any structures or programs in place to assist these young girls? And my main concern is the contraceptives. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to leave it like that? Is this, are we now becoming an early sex society? Is this where we're heading? I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
My very last question, please.
Briefly,
Unfortunately,
please.
I do apologize. I didn't fully get the gentleman's name.
Honorable de Villiers.
I do apologize. Please forgive me. The oversight, many members of parliament, especially mayors and key role players, has been removed from their positions. They have been replaced, and up to date, no one has actually been dealt with properly by enforcing the law. Is the judicial system just there for the poor, for the less fortunate? Is all these prisons that we have, is that only for the poorest of the poor? And is it okay? I've never seen, I've heard this minister and that councillor and that mayor has taken so much money. Is prison not for use? Is it only for us? And also to you, this is something new. There has been oversight committees. My question is, what are you planning to do different? Do you have a different strategy? And I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last row.
Excuse me. Good morning.
If we can be brief so that we can allow the panel to respond, please, because responses are very important.
Good morning, our Khoisans. Good morning, especially my queen of the Nama Royal House, Queen Komo. Good morning to the traditional leaders, and good morning to everybody in the house.
The previous speaker, can you switch off the mic? Thank
you. I want to refer the question to the Honorable Dr. Mkhize. Dr. Mkhize, you mentioned that the municipalities are underfunded in your representation. In your presentation. Now, my question is, why are they underfunded? Because it is a known factor that there's communities, and this money should serve the communities. Now, if there's underfunding, it means there will be no enough service delivery. Why is that? Is it not purposeful? Now, people are suffering, people are poor, people are sleeping without food. Is the government happy with that? Because the indigent people are the ones that are voting the government. Now, please, let the government not underfund the municipalities. And at the same time, the government should follow up the funding and see whether or not the money is used properly and efficiently. Now, to the gender-based, is it Mrs.? Yeah, Mrs. van der Merwe. Mrs. van der Merwe, how do you define gender-based violence? because there's a tendency of looking at women as, you know, the gender-based violence fitting them instead of looking at both masculine and feminine. Now, there are men who are being abused by women, but we are not looking at that. I don't know why. There are women who are also abused by men. There's different, you know, ways of abusing a person. Now, why don't we look at that so that we bring these people together and end by gender-based violence? Now, somebody was talking about teenage pregnancy. Was it you? Okay. You know, in the olden days, in our traditional way, we used to sit down with our girls, talk with them, and show them or tell them our values so that they cannot get into, you know, this kind of thing. But nowadays, it doesn't happen. Yes, it happens in the KZN because there are those, what do you call them? Yeah, and there are those, you know, women that call all girls together and, you know, teach them how to behave so that you can't get pregnant. There are those girls, you know, those happenings that are happening when you want to see that a girl doesn't involve herself in sex or in sexual activity. Why can't we do that? Why can't we be allowed to do that? Because that is preventing teenage pregnancy. Thank you
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Just one important thing. It won't be long.
Yes, please briefly.
Yeah.
So that we can allow the panel
In the
to respond.
townships, there's extortion. Now, how can the government stop that kind of thing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appeal that we allow, because it's quite a very huge volume of questions. Can we allow the panel to respond? And if we have time, we'll come back for the second round. Kabazela, thank you. Yeah. Oh, you want to be the last because of the... Okay.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank our stakeholders with the questions. I know that they've asked 2 questions, but they are similar. In our presentation of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we spoke about the national priorities, which is the 3 national priorities. And the third one, we then spoke about the building the capable, ethical, and developmental state. That then speaks to the 2 questions. One, they want to understand how do we as the Portfolio Committee monitor Director Generals. And you will then understand that DGs report to the responsible ministers. And as such, by extension, they then come before portfolio committees in different portfolio committees. And coming then to the different portfolio committees, they always attend before committees with their principals, which is the ministers. And it means then they implement all the policies and decisions from the ministers and obvious by extension from cabinet. And whom then all the ministries, they then account before committees and obvious before parliament. And secondly, you have asked about an issue that we have raised on States SA. I understand that's when this question comes from, on critical positions or critical roles, and that we find ourselves that in the States SA, they always go and look for greener pastures. And you are saying, well, how do we then retain that? And the simple answer is that, you know, we must make sure that we offer salaries that are competitive to locals, and we must make sure that as such, they are fairly compensated. Because when people leave this space, our country, and go and find greener pastures outside, it means, you know, how we compensate them is not enough. And I think also at some point, we must also emphasize an issue of training, because training is very important and mentorship is very important when you want to retain your critical positions, and obvious, you want to retain your key personnel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. It was regarding holding responsible politicians who have been found in contradiction of the law, and also a question about the equality before the law. And may I just maybe start by just clarifying, and I mean, I fully understand that that Parliament is a bit of a mystery sometimes. Not everybody knows what all the different functions and roles are that we do. My committee, we specifically look at the public service and administration. And that's just a fancy way of saying that we look at all the people that work for the state. So not the politicians, but the actual administrators that work for the state. So we don't do oversight over politicians, being politicians ourselves, but I think it's an important question, and if I may venture out of my committee space and maybe give you the following answer. Politicians get let go out of their positions, so mayors or councillors or legislators in province or even in national government for various reasons. Sometimes it's party political reasons or motions of no confidence or stuff like that. But they do get also let go because they're found guilty of transgressing the law, and in those specific circumstances, it is obviously the responsibility of the judiciary system of the NPA, the National Prosecuting Agency, to build a case and take them before the law. And it is absolutely 100% the case that everybody should be treated equally in front of the law. That is the whole basis of the rule of law, is that the judiciary is independent and that they shouldn't be influenced in any way by politicians. I would just like to also add, there's a further component, and that's politicians are public representatives. We get chosen every 5 years by elections. And if you are experiencing service delivery failures from politicians, then the ultimate thing you should be doing is, well, firstly, you can actually complain to the political party who the politician belongs to, so the councillor or the mayor. But if that doesn't help, then you should not vote for them again. That is your ultimate, that's every citizen's best lever, which they have. Every 5 years, you get to do a performance review on politicians. And if your politicians are failing you, you should review your electoral decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Villiers and Honorable Mgweba.
Thank you so much, Mr. Motapo, and thank you very much for the questions that we received. The first question came from Doc, who asked me about the budget, to say, well, if this department is such an important department, why has it got such a limited budget? And that is quite correct. So firstly, as I've pointed out, the department gets R1 billion, of which the bulk of that money goes to the NYDA and the CGE. So the first question then becomes, how effective is the Commission for Gender Equality? How effective and visible is it? How effective and visible is the NYDA? Because the bulk of the money goes there. So of course, our portfolio committee then must ensure that those two entities are robust and actually meeting the needs of women and young people. But then it leaves the department with 206 million. The question becomes, is that enough? No, because they spent the bulk of that money, as I've indicated, on operational costs and salaries. I also mentioned that now there's a National Council Against Gender-Based Violence that must be established. That National Council Against Gender-Based Violence will cost 63 million just to get it operational, and an additional 596 million is required. So just think about it. You've got no money, but you've got to establish a National Council Against Gender-Based Violence. If you don't have that funds, are you not setting that National Council Against Gender-Based Violence up for failure? So really the question is very valid, and we have been informed that the department has been talking to Treasury, and really it is our hope that not only this council will be funded, but that when we do get the budget tabled on the 12th of March, that there will be additional funding for this department. Bishop, you asked about teenage pregnancies and whether responsibility lies with my department or with social development. The protection or shelters for young women is the responsibility of social development. But I guess the question is, are there enough shelters and enough support for victims of gender-based violence? And that is not the case. It is largely because also now, because our country's got budget cuts, that we are cutting funding from NGOs. And I am vehemently opposed to that, because NGOs are vital. They are vital organs that do vital work on behalf of the state. And once you start cutting funding from NGOs, you are actually rolling back the very critical services that people need, vulnerable people need in our communities. There were two questions about teenage pregnancy, sir, at the back, and also here about teenage pregnancy and gender-based violence in general. I want to say at the outset, I think traditional leaders play a very important role in keeping our moral fiber as a society very strong. And we need to thank you for the work that you are doing, because we as politicians might be interacting on this level, but it's you on the ground that are actually doing the real work in support of our vulnerable communities. And we really need to thank you for that. And thank you also for engaging with us this morning. So I want to recognize the work that you are doing, but to also say that I think in terms of teenage pregnancy, but also in terms of gender-based violence, it requires a whole of society approach. We need to include young, so you asked what is gender-based violence, but violence equally applies to women and to men, and it should be treated as such. But when we speak about teenage pregnancies, remember, children who are pregnant below 16, we must call it out for what it is. It is statutory rape. And those uncles and those leaders and those church leaders in our community must be taken to task. But the question then becomes, in our communities, where are the teachers that are supposed to assist? But not only that, where are the social workers? Remember, Cabinet resolved in 2018 to say all social workers that have been trained by the state must be deployed to various key departments. So now I'm saying in schools or in areas where there's a prevalence of teenage pregnancy, would it not help us if the social workers that have been trained by the state are available at those schools and are available in those communities to assist our young people? So really, there's an urgent need to look, and this is what my portfolio committee is doing on the 11th and the 18th of March. We've called social development. We want to talk to them about the funding of NGOs. At a very minimum, can we stop the funding cuts to organizations that look after the most vulnerable? At the very minimum. Can we put more pressure on government to say, can we deliver on that 2018 resolution that says, let's employ all social workers that have been trained by the state and deploy them to vulnerable communities where young people need more assistance? And are those some of the solutions then that can start to address our gender-based violence crisis as a whole, but also specifically in terms of our teenage pregnancy crisis? Because also we need to not lose focus on this crisis, because I found we talk about teenage pregnancy and then it only comes back into the media once Christmas babies are delivered. There needs to be a sustained focus throughout the year. It's not something that we can pick up now because it's Christmas and then we drop the ball again. We need to look, what are the solutions? How do we implement the solutions? And then obviously, like I said, work together as a whole of society, whether it's teachers, our traditional leaders, or politicians. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Van der Merwe. Just to also emphasize the point that was made by Honorable Villiers, that there are a number of comments and questions that may not relate to the work or the scope that is covered by the committees that are in front of you. So there are colleagues from Parliament, the administration who are recording those questions, and they will direct them to the relevant portfolio committees or select committees to ensure that they are responded to, and we've got your addresses. That's why we're able to invite you here, and they will forward you those responses. Honorable Mkhize, you are the last to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the questions. I hope the program director will be kind enough to allow me space to respond to a number of these questions so that your stopwatch should be deactivated. The first issue relates to Mr. Hadebe raised an issue about non-payment of departments, of municipalities by government departments. It's a very serious issue. And this is an issue that we continue to engage with the ministers. And we believe that there's a process inside government now that is looking at interministerial coordination so that this matter can be dealt with. There are departments that owe municipalities, and some of them owe them through Department of Public Works, but they are the ones who are responsible. And so some coordination is taking place at that level to try and correct it. But we raise it continuously because it's a problem to have a government department owing a municipality for water, for electricity. It makes it unworkable. And so it's something that, as you raise your concern about it, we continuously raise those issues, as it were. You raise the issue about skills, and I think it's been, in a way, addressed by the Honorable de Villiers. But from the municipal perspective, from the point of view of the committee, when someone is appointed into a position, there has to be an authority granted by the minister that those senior managers should in fact occupy that post. It allows the minister, excuse me, to evaluate the skills and competence and the suitability of the individual. Without the minister having concurred, such a person will not be employed. And therefore, when we go into the municipality and ask for their qualification, we are actually asking the minister, how did this one get appointed if they don't qualify? And so the minister has the overall responsibility. And I must say that the department has been very focused on this, saying they've got a process that will not only look at people who qualify, but must also look at people who might be implicated in wrongdoing previously, that they should not come in to be employed in another municipality. So it's an issue that government has to take very serious, pay serious attention to, and the committee is focusing on that. Honorable Dr. Teliswa, you raised an issue around the payments for services is linked to the lack of performance or poor service delivery. Actually, there is a direct relationship. It's part of what we call governability. Now, because you raised the question, let me say that in the theory of governance, there is an issue of governance and governability. And governance relates to the act of government in delivering services and the cooperation of communities in guiding government to deliver the services in an appropriate manner. Then there's the issue of governability, which is about the willingness of those who are governed to subject themselves to the authority of the government in authority. Now that is not something that you take for granted. People cannot accept the authority of a government that didn't participate in its election. In other words, the government acts as an agent of the people who are voters, and in the absence of that contract, then the government becomes illegitimate. And part of the problem of illegitimacy is that it leads to ungovernability, where people do not respect the laws and do not pay the rates and taxes and all of that. And part of that also is linked to what we call legitimacy of government. Is not just that they were voted in by the same people, but it also is linked to the performance of government of what was expected by the community. And sometimes that would happen on the basis that the community expected certain services and they are rendered, but the government might actually render those services in a manner that's not satisfactory to the community, either because the community has got huge expectations which are beyond the resources, or on the other hand, the government is actually out of touch with the needs of the community. Now, even the case where you've got a government that says to perform, that performs less than what is expected, or has got demands which are more than what it can offer, it's called an overloaded government. And the overloaded government tends to run into problems of legitimacy crisis. Now, this is what we as governments, the government have to always be looking up to ensure that the communication and the understanding of what government can do and what people expect is always matched by a proper interaction and proper communication, so that people can understand that for government to render the services, there's a responsibility on the community to pay for the services that are rendered, and that for those services to be rendered, the government relies on the community to consume them, but also to guide them as to where they need such services. And so it's a very complex relationship, and your point is correct, but it does require government to engage closely with the community, because in the absence of such close interaction, then that gap will create a situation where people's expectations are not in variance with the government's capacity, and therefore people will believe government is not performing or is not performing properly. But having said so, let me say that the point that has been raised, I think a gentleman who raised the issue spoke about people not paying, or people paying, but then the others were consuming the services. Now, this is the problem of unplanned urban settlements, where someone will come and settle and put up a shack, and in the process will then go and access services that were not planned for, and therefore they may do so in a manner that is not as legitimate or is not as legal. And at this point, I think the gentleman that raised it, at this point, there's no government that would be happy with that situation. And nobody will sit and just watch when people are breaking the law simply because the government is predominantly black, and therefore the people who are doing so are black. And in a matter of governance, there's a contract. It doesn't matter who the people are, they've got to behave in a particular way, and the government has got to behave in a particular way. And in this case, the agreement has been to the point that the issue of the debt must be analyzed properly. So when the ESCOM looks at the debt, or the municipality looks at the debt, they then realize that there are certain people who do pay for the services that others are not. That's why now there's a shift very much to metered services, electricity, prepaid electricity. And on the prepaid, it basically to say you will use what you have already paid for, as opposed to the other way. And that is being done specifically to address the problem of people who consume what they've actually not been allocated. And in this case, we believe that's part of the resolving the problem of non-payments, the problem of illegal connections in yoga, and all of that. In some of the instances, in fact, people have actually gone to buy transformers and install them, and then distribute electricity on their own without the authority of Eskom. And when Eskom has discovered those, they've actually switched it off and then said, okay, let's do an audit. Who owes, who pays, who consumes, and where there's a variance, until they pay, there will actually not be any services. So a lot is being done about that, and I don't think we must rationalize it or think that there's someone who's keeping closing one eye when you're seeing the problem. It's actually a serious problem that has to be balanced properly in terms of ensuring that services are available, but also people are assisted. That's why when we visit municipalities, we deal with the issue of the indigent policy, because we expect people must pay for the services, but those who can't must then approach the municipality and be registered properly so that they can be given what is due to them on the basis of the free basic services. And that is how we should actually ensure that there's proper governance in any municipality. And so a lot of that is actually being done now. They may not have reached your area, but I can tell you now, I'm aware of many places where the electricity connection has been stopped, and an audit was done, and then people are asked to pay and then re-register so that they can have regular payment of the services. The one gentleman, and I didn't get the name again, is how to make councillors accountable. I want to say, you have to talk to the councillor directly. I will expect that your local councillor should be somebody that can be accessible to communities, to raise issues with them, to correct them if they are not doing things properly, to tell them if they are not doing work, because for any community leader, you depend on the people that you work with. So that would be one thing. But secondly, you need to actually go to the party. That's got the authority over that councillor as well. That's still your right to do so. And you can go there even if you didn't vote for that party, if that councillor belongs to that party. And of course, if that doesn't work, Honorable de Villiers is correct, don't vote for that councillor. You can actually do a petition to actually demand that the councillor be changed or be removed, or ask them to resign if they are not able to perform properly. And therefore, all of that is actually accessible. And I believe it's important for us to emphasize that aspect, because, when you are here, you voted to be here. You're not here by favor. As you all are here, you are here. We must answer the questions to you, not because we're doing you a favor, but because we are here, because you brought us here. And one of the things you want to know is, when things aren't going right, Parliament must answer you. And that is correct. And in this case, it is therefore important to say, our people need to see Parliament being effective, so that it is important to come to Parliament and raise the issue and get a solution, rather than going to burn barricades in the street. That is more important, so that you don't go destroy a library because the road doesn't work, because the councillor doesn't take your calls. And the issues are that we need to try and close that gap, so that there's a lot more credibility given to public representatives to solve your problems, rather than a need for people to take the law onto their own hands. And that is when people are able to feel that, that will be much better, properly functioning democracy. So we take your point, and we're saying, raise the questions, raise the issues about councillors. They'll never be perfect until you actually see that you can give them the necessary feedback. Feedback does not need to be saying, we're cheering you, we're always going to clap hands for you. We'll say, no, we don't agree with you, we don't like what you're doing. That is what needs to be done. So our councillors have to be in touch with our people, and you should find it possible to go to an MP's office to go and raise your concern, even if you didn't come here. But if you come here, you raise these issues here, mainly because it's your right. Now, you raise another question about funding traditional Khoisan events. Yes, there may not be enough resources to cover those, but let me say, you should approach all the public representatives. Your MPs in the constituency, can they assist, and your your councillors, can they assist? Your municipality, can they assist? The Department of COGTA may assist in some of the areas, depending on how the department, that department in the province is structured. I'm aware that in some of the provinces, the cultural and traditional activities are funded through government, through municipalities, and so on. And then, of course, the Department of Arts and Culture is ultimately the one as well that's got to do that. So let's try and approach as many of those as whatever we have access to. But I do want to say that it's an important point. I think one gentleman raised it here about the role of the community and all these cultures. These traditions, they're not just fun. They are a way of codifying a particular behavior that we're encouraging on people. Part of our Ubuntu values are transmitted through those cultures, through those traditions. When you talk about prevention of pregnancy, it's not the responsibility of the girl not to be pregnant. It's also the responsibility of the boy. It's also the responsibility of the brothers and the sisters and the friends and the families and the community and the traditional leaders and the religious leaders. So all of us have got that responsibility. As you raised the question, yes, the chairperson, Honorable Liezl has responded, but actually we must not abdicate and then expect government to be stopping pregnancies. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be the communities that need to come up and want to ask the question, how is government helping in that regard? Maybe with knowledge, with institutions, with additional facilities, with tech expertise, with contraception, and all of those things. So it doesn't become just one person's problem. It's a problem all of us who must own as communities. Then, Bishop, you raised the issue of these traditional leaders and traditional leaders and Khoisan bill. So this bill was meant to regulate the activities of traditional authorities, traditional leaders, traditional structures. And the way it got done, it left out the Khoi and the San community. This issue was raised as a problem. And that issue, when it was raised, now needed to be corrected. But when it was corrected, some other organization challenged the bill and said that the bill needed to be redone. And then, of course, the Constitutional Court ruled that the bill needed to be taken back, not because of Khoi and the San traditional, Khoi and the San issues, but more because of some other issues in relation to consultation processes. But when we interacted with the Khoi and the San communities, we then found out that they actually felt the bill inadequately addressed the issues of their concern. Now, we then had to hold a meeting where the Honorable Queen Belinda talking about the convention. It was to deal with that issue. But just to say briefly what it means, that bill is supposed to be brought back to Parliament by May this year. And that date, by that date, beyond that date, it means the bill will be ineffective. It would have been cancelled, as it were. But before that date, that bill is in force in the way it was passed before the amendment came into being. So what that means now is that we've had a meeting with the minister and asked them when are they bringing the bill, because the issue is due next month. Though the minister has indicated that, look, there are lots of challenges here. Firstly, the internal processes of consultation within government have not allowed the bill to be back to Parliament to be processed early enough so that by May, when the court ruling takes effect, that bill is now back and has been passed. So it cannot happen within that time. So we've now agreed that from the point of view of the minister, the minister and the department are going to approach the court to extend the time so that the bill can be processed in cabinet and then come back to parliament for the consultation. So that process is going on. Now, while that is going on, a new issue has arisen, and that issue is the concerns of the Khoi and the San community. And if I may say, in this regard, one of the challenges has to do with the recognition of who is Khoi and San. And now this meeting we had last 2 weeks ago was already beginning to say, if you have a consultation in relation to Khoi and the San matters, on the Khoi people, you have got the Griqua, you've got the Korana, you have got then of course you've got the Nama, you have also got the San people. Now the San people, when we're meeting there, they said to us they've got like 18 stems, the Ham, the Kwe, and they mentioned all of them. Now, all of these things gives you a problem in terms of understanding what the structure is like. And that structure is not necessarily the same as the Zulu and the Xhosa. It will be different. And therefore, it needs to be now factored into the bill. We don't have the time for that unless there's an extension of time given. So once you go into that discussion, then there's a commission on the Khoi and the San issues. Now that commission is supposed to tell us what the structure should be, but that commission will not act on its original understanding. It will act on the basis of information they get from the Khoi and the San communities. Now there's an application format that is open. So for all those who believe, who understand and need to be recognized, to actually start filling in these details and sending them to the commission on the Khoi and the San issues. That process, when it closes, and I think it's going to close in March, I can't recall the exact date, you need to all have done it. It will then deal with those who are raising the question about the House of Traditional Leaders, Khoi and the San leaders in the Western Cape, because Western Cape said they didn't have traditional leaders, because they didn't recognize the Khoi and the San community. And part of it has got to do with the misnomer that one day must be corrected. Because the real issue comes from this term of calling Khoi and the San people colored. Now, this is the African people. We're all African, we've got all our traditions, we've got all our things. Now, that needs to be structured properly so that when the commission on the Khoi and the San community gives us a report of what the structures are, those structures must then be part of the law in a manner that allows you to be able to be recognized in the Western Cape as traditional leaders. Now, we were talking here, and then out of the history, and a very interesting history of the liberation of South Africa, which we need to all know and recognize, that the first of the people that actually was fighting, they are amongst the first people who were fighting, was Ochumato, who was fighting off the beach, yes, in the Western Cape, and ultimately becomes a prisoner in Robben Island, and the first one to escape Robben Island and be alive and come back and fight again. Now that is a history that you know. The history that Hendrik Witbooi actually fought with Jan van Riebeeck, I think it was 1658, out there, and that's what we got. A lot of Nama people who went to Namibia. It was because of that fight. And these issues are part of our history that is important to capture in this whole discussion. And so our point then being that let's be together, let's go through this process. We will be needing to consult you, we'll be needing your knowledge about what needed to be done on all of this. This takes us into a lot of dynamics which we didn't understand, but I must say it was that convention, as much as it might have had some challenges here and there, which I think were not so destructive to the overall outcome, a lot of information about the Khoi and San community came out there, which if we're to hold on to, South Africa will understand the situation and the situation very differently. So that is the question, Bishop, you're asking me, and I'm saying, how long will they wait? We'll have to wait for this process. but we not just wait, we're gonna have to participate in the process. And then, of course, let me just, so that I can clear your issues quickly, I'll come back to this issue of the Cohen Sun Convention. You raised the issue about partners who want to help on the ESCOM issues. Please share the numbers. We'll see whether they need to talk to the committee, to the minister, to the department of the municipality. Then we'll see how we can follow that up. Then the other issue you raised about abuse of congregants is a matter that we must all stand up and be strong about. That issue, you are asking slightly differently about the Tutuzela centers, and my focus is more on the fact that people have got a right to raise and to write complaints to the Commission for Religious and Linguistic Communities. Those are the ones that will allow each and every one of us, your religion must be respected. And it must not be because you have subjected yourself to a particular religious affiliation, you must therefore be abused because of your own loyalty to that religious affiliation. You have to be protected despite the fact that you have subjected yourself to that religion. So there's no one who's got a right to abuse congregants or followers of a religious affiliation of any sort. And that was the point I wanted to make. Then the very sensitive issue raised by the Queen Belinda in relation to feeling targeted and being abused. May I request that please get us the issue in much more direct writing, which I would be prepared to look at and follow up. No one should have been targeted and should have been abused as a result of their participation in that convention that we were at. It was a meeting, just for the members to understand, it was a meeting which was convened by the minister, and we participated because we've all been in partnership on this matter, and we made it very clear that it's not just the executive, but also the portfolio committee and parliament are interested in this issue, and that all the political parties are similarly interested. So no party, no political party must use the issue of the Cohen the Sun for party political mobilization. It needs to be respected as an issue that is above all of us. And on that basis, we therefore handled that matter with a bit of the respect that it needed. An incident that happened in there that involves the Honorable Queen Belinda was one of the things that happened in any meeting where there would have been an exchange of views and disagreement. What I would object to very strongly is that no one person has a right to take any of that information and go out to actually harass, abuse anybody. Whether the individual is a minister or a member of parliament or a traditional leader, no one is supposed to. When you are in a meeting, you are under the protection of the chairperson or the convener of the meeting. And similarly, the honorable lady was under that protection. Yes, if there are issues that need to be dealt with, they need to be dealt with in that context. Now, unfortunately for me, I don't have full knowledge of all the things that have gone out, although it was brought to our attention that there were some things that had gone out to the social media with regard to this particular incident. And then as a result, a meeting, as I was told, a meeting that was supposed to be convened in Kimberley was called off because of this. I don't believe there's a basis for it, but I don't know the meeting. I don't know what was it all about. But I would suggest that a formal complaint is laid to us as the chairperson of the committee, and then I'll raise the issue. I'll raise the issue with the relevant ministers. Minister Teliswa is aware of what the issues were, and then of course, if there's an issue that involves Minister Mkhize, then we'll all get the ministers to discuss it and find a way to resolve it. I would want to suggest that let's not take the matter further than that, and let's not take it out of this kind of situation where we are, and let's leave it that once I've received the complaint, I will actually have a direct discussion with both Minister Teliswa and Minister Mkhize so that we can actually come to an understanding on this matter. And you should not feel targeted as a member of the public, as a traditional leader, as an individual, who've got a right to raise your points. And whatever happens in any situation, in any meeting, it's a matter for those who are convening the meeting to deal with. And as you'll be aware, we were starting to deal with it, not in relation to what's going on outside, but in relation to making the meetings flow properly. That issue shouldn't have gone beyond this point. So what the social media is carrying right now, I haven't got any knowledge, but at least with your information, we'll be able to deal with it. Then the other issue relates to mayors who were replaced with criminal activities, but no action being taken. I think that, again, you have a right to raise that with the municipal council, with the political party, with the minister, with the portfolio committee, with the police, and where you've got information, you have a right to go and raise it there. So let me leave it at that and say there is no law for others and a different one for a law for some and a different one for others. We all have the same law. So I would like to leave it at that. Then the question that was raised about underfunding municipalities. The issue of underfunding municipalities, let me say it's a rather relative issue because there was a formula that was arrived at through what is called the Financial and Fiscal Commission as to how the three spheres would have a vertical division of revenue. Revenue. That division was accepted and what has operated for the past 30 years. Now, in the exercise of municipal services, a lot of issues were raised, but part of the assumptions that were part of the division of the revenue, the way it has been done up to now, was the fact that there is a role in every locality for every level or for every sphere of government. In other words, there may be money that is sitting with a national department, but that money will ultimately be spent in a locality at a local level, from the provincial government in the same way. So it's a accumulation of this money that will ultimately give us the services. It is not necessarily only what the municipality has. And this is partly why you've got a section in the Constitution that talks about intergovernmental relations and cooperative government. Now, those two concepts are concepts that have become important in the governance in South Africa, but there's a change in the system of how government used to run before. Now, in the past, it was a unitary government, which was straight, and this one has got certain elements which are federal, which means each and every one of those spheres has got authority, power, and controls the resources. Part of what COCTA as a department is to do is to make sure that we organize those ultimately. This is why you have now got what is called the district development model to say all of those who have got money to spend in this ward must bring it. So it is not, that's when I say a relative issue of underfunding comes from that. But having said so, the other aspect had to do with another assumption which was linked to the municipalities, that when the municipalities are created, they will have capacity for revenue generation. As it turned out, not all of them have. As it turns out, some have some capacity, others have got less capacity. And that is what has brought about this question of saying you need now to review the funding formula for municipalities. Now, the president has raised that issue. The minister has raised that issue. That matter has also been discussed in the committee. Salka has raised it. So there's a discussion now to say that matter of the funding of the municipalities is being reviewed. So again, a gentleman was asking, those people are poor, which is true. Those people will sleep without having food, which is true. But is government happy? No government can be happy when people are starving. No government can be happy when people are asleep without eating. No government can be happy when people don't have water. No government can be happy when people don't have electricity. That is why we've got an indigent policy. That is why we've got a social support grant. That's why we've got child support grant. That's why we've got free basic services, is to try and close that gap. And therefore, with all of that having been done, you still find that there are municipalities that need additional support, and that's why we're looking at revising the funding formula. But you are right, you must raise the issue, because it's when you raise this issue that we are able to get government to respond in the way that it has. Then, yeah, let me leave the other issues. There's been discussion around extortion. I think let's leave it. We're all concerned about it. The issue you've raised around youth and teenage pregnancies. Let's get back to the point. It's us as communities who must take responsibility. It's us as communities that must create our own family institutions, community institutions, to actually help younger children so that they can grow to maturity before they actually get involved in sexual activity, before they get involved in getting unplanned pregnancies. There are huge problems associated with unplanned teenage pregnancies. I don't want us to spend too much time talking about them. I'm just saying that let's note it, but let's say we all have a role to play in all of that. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson Mkhize, Honorable Chairperson Mgweba. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson de Villiers, Honorable Chairperson van der Merwe, for your sound and very comprehensive responses. Esteemed guests and respected stakeholders, we thank you for coming. Thank you for your presence. We value the interaction as always. And this is not the last time that you are here. This is your parliament. It is open to you. You will be continuously engaging with the various chairpersons and the leadership of parliament, and that the engagements do not start here and they don't end here. We know that there are many questions, but we will ensure that further engagements with the chairpersons happen so that you can thresh out all the issues that need to be threshed out. We thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Sorry, sir, you said you're gonna have a second round with us.
No, this is unacceptable. Everybody has to say, once again, the COI is being marginalized. Once again.
Second round. Second round, sir, you promised. You promised second round. You're betraying us.